Imagine giving your all to your family and then finding out that your wife was cheating on you with your own father. Max was a reliable support for his family all his life. He helped his parents financially, loved his wife Sophia, and took care of his two children, Luca, 7, and Mia, 4, above all else. But one day, he finds out that Sophia has been having an affair with his father for several months. So, betrayal. The disgusting realization that his family was just an illusion. But it is not the fact of betrayal that kills him the most. His parents and wife think he should just get over it. They do not yet know that they have made the biggest mistake of their lives. Max had always believed in family. He built his life around the idea that loyalty and love were the foundation of everything. He worked hard, making sure his wife, Sophia, and their two children, Luca and Mia, had everything they needed. He even supported his parents financially, ensuring they lived comfortably in their retirement. His father, Richard, had always been a strong presence in his life, a man he looked up to. His mother, Evelyn, was the heart of their home, a woman who always knew how to bring the family together. Max took pride in knowing he had a close-knit family, one that stood by each other no matter what. Sophia was the love of his life. They met in college, where she had been the bright, charismatic woman who could light up any room. Over the years, their relationship evolved from passionate young love to a partnership built on trust and stability. Or at least, that was what Max thought. He never questioned their marriage, never doubted her commitment. Sure, there had been small fights, disagreements about work schedules or parenting styles, but nothing out of the ordinary. He assumed they were just like any other married couple navigating the complexities of life together. Max's job required long hours, sometimes late nights, but he did it all for them. He wanted Sophia and the kids to have the best. When he wasn't working, he was home, present and engaged. He coached Luca's soccer team, read bedtime stories to Mia, and planned date nights with Sophia whenever he could. He believed he was doing everything right. He believed his family was happy. It all started with a text message, an anonymous number, just a few words that shattered his world. Your wife is sleeping with your father. He stared at the screen, his heart pounding, his breath catching in his throat. At first, he thought it was some sick joke. Who would send something like that? He wanted to dismiss it, delete it, forget it ever happened. But a small voice in his head whispered that something had felt off lately. He ignored the feeling at first, chalking up Sophia's distant behavior to stress. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe he was overreacting. But once the seed of doubt was planted, it grew. Max started paying attention to the little things. Sophia had been staying out later, claiming she was meeting with friends or running errands. His father had been acting strange too, avoiding eye contact, brushing off family dinners with weak excuses. Evelyn, his mother, didn't seem to notice, or maybe she chose not to. The thought made his stomach turn. One evening, when Sophia said she was going out again, Max decided to follow her. He felt ridiculous, like some paranoid husband in a bad movie, but he needed to know. He needed proof that his fears were just that, irrational fears. He kept his distance, trailing her car through the city until she pulled into the parking lot of a small boutique hotel. Max parked across the street, watching as she got out, her phone pressed to her ear. Then he saw his father step out of his own car, walk up to her, and kiss her like they had been doing it for years. His stomach twisted in knots. The air in his lungs felt heavy, suffocating. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't just some horrible mistake. His wife and his father were having an affair. Max sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the hotel entrance, waiting for them to come back out. He imagined storming in, confronting them right there, demanding an explanation. But what would that accomplish? The betrayal had already happened. No amount of screaming or punching walls would change that. He drove home in silence, his mind racing. He couldn't even cry. He was too numb. By the time Sophia returned that night, slipping into bed beside him like nothing had happened, he had made up his mind. He wouldn't react emotionally. He wouldn't let them manipulate him into thinking this was just some mistake. He needed to be smart, calculated. He needed a plan. The next morning, he acted as if nothing was wrong. He kissed Sophia on the forehead, made coffee, and got the kids ready for school. If she noticed anything different about him, she didn't say. But inside, Max was a storm waiting to break. He started gathering evidence: text messages, call logs, receipts. He contacted a lawyer, laying out everything he had discovered. He wanted full custody of the kids. He wanted to cut off his parents financially. They had used him, betrayed him in the worst possible way, and he wasn't going to let them continue benefiting from his generosity. Then came the confrontation. Max waited until a Sunday dinner, when everyone was gathered, his parents, Sophia, the kids playing in the living room. The air was thick with the scent of home-cooked food, but Max had lost his appetite days ago. He waited until everyone had their plates, until laughter filled the room. And then he set his phone on the table and pressed play. The room went silent. The recording of Sophia's voice, murmuring sweet nothings to Richard, played out like a scene from a nightmare. His mother gasped, her fork clattering to her plate. Sophia's face drained of color. Richard clenched his jaw, looking anywhere but at his son. Max's voice was eerily calm. How long? He didn't yell. He didn't throw things. He just wanted the truth. Sophia stammered, searching for words that wouldn't come. Richard cleared his throat. Max, son. Don't call me that. Max cut him off. You lost the right to call me that the moment you decided to betray me. His mother looked between them, realization dawning on her face. Is this true? She asked Richard, her voice barely above a whisper. Richard didn't answer. He didn't need to. Sophia finally found her voice. Max, I never meant to hurt you. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You never meant to hurt me? You were sneaking around with my father behind my back. You destroyed our family. And you never meant to hurt me? The kids ran into the room then, breaking the tension. Max took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay in control. He wouldn't let them see this, wouldn't let them be caught in the crossfire of his wife's betrayal. We'll talk later, he said, standing up. But make no mistake, this is over. You will not manipulate me into staying. You will not guilt me into forgiving. I'm done. As he walked away, Sophia called after him, desperation in her voice. Please, Max, don't do this. Think about the kids. He stopped in the doorway. That's exactly what I'm doing. Then, without another word, he left. In the days that followed, he filed for divorce, cut off his parents financially, and began the fight for full custody of his children. He wasn't just walking away from a toxic marriage. He was reclaiming his life. And he would make sure that neither Sophia nor Richard would ever have power over him again. Max spent the following days in a haze of controlled fury. He had always believed that betrayal was something that happened to other people, something he would read about or see in movies. Never in his worst nightmares did he think his wife and father would be capable of such an act. He had already taken the first steps to reclaim his life, filing for divorce, freezing joint accounts, and cutting off his parents financially. But the battle was far from over. Sophia was desperate to talk. She left voicemail after voicemail, sending long texts filled with apologies and excuses. Max deleted them without reading past the first few words. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry she had been caught. The distinction was clear to him now. One evening, his mother, Evelyn, showed up at his doorstep, her expression drawn and weary. He let out a long breath before opening the door. We need to talk, she said softly. Max crossed his arms, blocking the entrance. Talk about what? About everything. About your father, about Sophia, about how we can fix this. His laugh was bitter. Fix this? There's nothing to fix, Mom. They made their choices, and I made mine. Evelyn's eyes glistened. I didn't know, Max. I swear to you, I had no idea. He studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. If anyone had been aware of Richard's betrayal, it would have been her. But the pain in her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly, told him she was speaking the truth. Max stepped aside, letting her in. They sat in the living room, an unbearable silence stretching between them, before Evelyn finally spoke again. I'm divorcing him. His eyebrows lifted in surprise. You are? I can't stay with a man who could do this to his own son. Her voice was quiet but firm. I don't know how long it's been going on. I don't want to know. But I refuse to be part of it anymore. A wave of unexpected relief washed over Max. He had prepared himself to lose both parents, assuming his mother would stand by Richard's side. But now, he saw the pain of betrayal mirrored in her eyes. And for the first time since discovering the affair, he felt like he wasn't completely alone. "Good," he said simply. Evelyn hesitated before reaching across the table, taking his hand. "What about the kids?" Much stiffened. "What about them?" She sighed. "Sophia is still their mother. You know she'll fight for custody." His jaw clenched. "She won't win." "You don't know that. I will do everything in my power to keep them away from her." He met his mother's gaze, his expression resolute. "I won't let my children grow up thinking this kind of betrayal is normal. I won't let her twist their perception of love and loyalty." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Then I'll support you." Max felt something in his chest loosen slightly. He wasn't sure if it was relief or just sheer exhaustion. He had so much more to do, but at least now, he had an ally. 2 weeks passed before he received the inevitable: Sophia's official response to the divorce filing. She was contesting full custody, demanding shared parenting rights. Max met with his lawyer, a sharp-witted woman named Rebecca, who wasted no time going over strategy. "We have strong grounds," she said, flipping through the paperwork. "Her infidelity alone won't win you full custody. But if we prove that she created an emotionally toxic environment for the children, we have a case." "She cheated on me with my father," Max said, his voice tight. "How much more toxic does it get?" Rebecca sighed. "The court won't just take that into account. We need to show a pattern of behavior that suggests she is unfit to be the primary caregiver." Max leaned forward, determination burning in his chest. "Then let's do that." Over the next few weeks, he gathered evidence. Witness statements, inconsistencies in Sophia's timeline of events, financial records proving that she had been funneling money from their shared accounts to fund her secret hotel stays. Every detail mattered. Meanwhile, Richard tried to reach out. A voicemail here, a message there. Max ignored them all. The man who had raised him, who had been his role model, was dead to him now. The first court hearing was tense. Sophia sat across from him, her lawyer rattling off a prepared statement about how she was a loving, devoted mother who made a single mistake. Max's lawyer countered with cold, hard facts. But what sealed it was the testimony of an unexpected witness, Evelyn. His mother stood before the judge, her voice steady. "I have watched my son put his children above everything. He is their rock, their protector. And while I am ashamed to admit it, I have seen my husband and Sophia prioritize their own selfish desires over the well-being of this family." Max turned his head slightly, seeing Sophia's face pale, Richard shifting uncomfortably in his seat. His mother continued, unshaken. "If custody is to be awarded, it should go to the parent who has always put the children first." By the time she finished, Max could feel the case tipping in his favor. He wasn't naive. This would be a long fight. But he had one thing Sophia and Richard didn't: integrity. Max walked out of the courtroom with his fists clenched, his heart pounding in his chest. He had won the first battle, but he knew the war was far from over. Sophia had been humiliated, her image of the devoted wife and mother shattered in front of the judge. Richard had looked like a cornered animal, shifting uncomfortably as Evelyn laid bare the truth about his betrayal. But Max knew better than to think they would give up so easily. Sophia was relentless. If he thought she would retreat and accept her losses, he had underestimated her. Within days, her lawyer had filed for emergency mediation, claiming that Max was attempting to alienate the children from her. The audacity made his blood boil. She was the one who had destroyed their family, yet she was trying to paint herself as the victim. Rebecca, his lawyer, remained composed. "It's a tactic," she explained. "She wants to paint you as the unreasonable parent, the one who's making this personal rather than focusing on the kids." Muck scoffed. "She's the one who slept with my father. How is this not personal?" Rebecca folded her hands. "It is. But the court doesn't care about your emotions, Max. They care about what's best for the children. If you let anger cloud your judgment, she'll use it against you." That night, as Max put the kids to bed, he saw the way Mia clung to him a little tighter than usual. Luca asked if he could sleep in his room for the night. They sensed the tension, even if he tried to hide it. He hated that they were being dragged through this. They were too young to understand the depth of the betrayal, but they knew something was wrong, and that made his resolve even stronger. At the mediation, Sophia put on a performance worthy of an Oscar. She dabbed at her eyes, spoke in a trembling voice about how much she missed the children, about how she was willing to do whatever it takes to co-parent peacefully. Max had to bite his tongue to keep from calling out her lies. Richard wasn't there. Sophia knew better than to bring him into this setting, but his presence loomed over everything. The mediator, an older woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, looked between them. "Mr. Carter, are you willing to work towards a shared custody agreement?" Max forced himself to stay calm. "I want what's best for my kids, but I have serious concerns about Sophia's judgment. This isn't just about infidelity. It's about trust, stability, and what kind of environment my children will be in when they're with her." Sophia sniffled. "I made a mistake, but that doesn't mean I don't love our children." Max turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You didn't just make a mistake, Sophia. You carried on an affair with my father, and you didn't stop, even when you knew it would tear our family apart." The mediator sighed. "I understand this is a highly emotional situation, but let's keep the focus on the children." In the end, the mediation was inconclusive. Sophia was pushing for equal time, but Max wasn't going to agree to anything that put his children in an unstable environment. The fight would continue in court. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. Sophia started showing up unexpectedly at the house, demanding to see the kids even when it wasn't her scheduled time. When Max refused, she would make a scene, loud enough that the neighbors started to notice. He documented everything. Every missed pickup, every unannounced visit, every time she tried to manipulate the children against him. And then Richard tried to reach out. Max was at work when he got the message. It was short. "We need to talk. Please. It's important." He stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. The audacity of the man. After everything, after betraying his own son in the worst possible way, Richard had the nerve to act like there was anything left to say. Max deleted the message without responding. But Richard wasn't done. A week later, Max came home to find him sitting on the front steps, waiting. The sight made Max's blood run cold. He wanted to turn around, to leave, but Richard stood up before he could. "Son, just hear me out," Richard said, his voice pleading. Max clenched his fists. "I am not your son." Richard flinched but pressed on. "I know I hurt you. I know I ruined everything. But I need to explain." No, Max's voice was steel. "There is no explanation that will make this okay. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed my children. You destroyed everything I built." Richard looked away, shame creeping into his features. "I never meant for it to happen." Max left coldly. "Yeah? Funny how affairs don't just happen." "It wasn't an accident, Dad. It was a choice." Repeated, over and over again. Richard swallowed hard. "I miss you. I miss my grandkids. I just want to fix this." Max's face hardened. "You don't get to fix this. You lost that right the moment you decided that my wife was worth more than your son." Richard took a step closer. "Please, Max." Max stepped back. "Leave. And don't ever come back." For the first time, Richard seemed to truly understand. His shoulders slumped, his face pale. He nodded slowly and walked away. Max watched until he disappeared down the street, then went inside without a second glance. That night, he held his kids a little longer as they drifted off to sleep. He had lost his father. He had lost his wife. But what mattered most was still with him, and he would fight with everything he had to make sure they stayed safe. The battle wasn't over. But Max knew one thing for certain. He would never let betrayal define him. He would rise above it, stronger than ever before. Max woke up before dawn, his mind already racing. The custody battle was heating up, and every move mattered. Sophia was relentless. Her legal team had filed another motion, claiming Max was intentionally keeping the children from her. It was a lie, of course. He had followed the court's temporary orders to the letter, but that didn't stop her from twisting reality to suit her needs. Rebecca had warned him that Sophia was getting desperate. The court had been leaning in his favor, and she knew it. But desperate people were dangerous. He had to be ready for anything. That morning, as he sipped his coffee and watched the sunrise, his phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Evelyn asterisk I heard from Sophia's lawyer. She's trying to claim parental alienation. Be careful, Max. Max clenched his jaw. So that was her angle. If she could convince the court that he was poisoning the children against her, she could sway the judge in her favor. He exhaled sharply. He had expected this. He had prepared for it, but that didn't make it any easier. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. Until then, he needed to stay composed, document everything, and most of all, make sure the kids were okay. Luca and Mia were his biggest concern. He could see the confusion in their eyes, the questions they were too young to put into words. He had tried to shield them from the ugliness of the situation, but some things were impossible to hide. At dinner that night, Mia looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Daddy, why doesn't Mommy live here anymore?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. He set his fork down, taking a deep breath. "Mommy and I, we have some things to figure out," he said carefully. "But we both love you very much." Luca frowned. "But Mommy said you don't want us to see her." Max's heart twisted. So Sophia was already planting seeds. He forced a calm smile. "That's not true, buddy. You can always see Mommy. We just have to follow some rules right now." Mia tilted her head. "Rules? Like a game," he said, trying to keep it light. "Sometimes we have to follow certain steps to make sure everything is fair." Luca didn't look convinced, but he nodded anyway. "Okay." Max made a mental note to tell Rebecca. If Sophia was feeding them lies, he needed to shut it down before it got worse. The following day, Max received another unwelcome surprise. A letter in the mail. From Richard. He stared at it for a long time before opening it. His father's handwriting was neat, deliberate. Asterisk, asterisk, Max, asterisk, asterisk. I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I've lost your trust, and maybe I don't deserve another chance. But I need you to understand that I regret everything. Not a day goes by that I don't wish I could take it back. Asterisk, asterisk. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I miss you. I miss my grandchildren. I know I hurt you, and I know I have no right to ask, but please, don't let this be the end of our family. Asterisk, asterisk. Dad. Max read the letter twice. Then he tore it in half and threw it in the trash. His father had made his choice. Now, he had to live with it. A few days later, the court hearing arrived. Max sat in the courtroom, his lawyer beside him. Across from him, Sophia looked composed, her expression carefully neutral. But he knew better. She was playing the long game. Her lawyer stood, launching into a well-rehearsed speech about how Max was denying her access to the children, turning them against her. She even produced a supposed witness statement, someone claiming Max had spoken negatively about Sophia in front of the kids. Rebecca stood. "Your Honor, my client has documented evidence proving he has adhered to every court-ordered visitation schedule. Furthermore, we have concerns about the influence Mrs. Carter is attempting to exert over the children, as evidenced by conversations Mr. Carter has recorded." She handed the judge a file. Max kept his eyes on Sophia. She wasn't looking at him anymore. The judge flipped through the documents, then looked up. "Mrs. Carter, can you explain this?" Sophia's lawyer scrambled for an answer, but the damage was done. The judge set the file down. "At this time, I see no evidence to support the claim of parental alienation. Temporary custody arrangements will remain as they are." Relief flooded Max. It wasn't a final victory, but it was a step in the right direction. Sophia looked livid. As they left the courtroom, she caught up to him. "You think this is over?" she hissed under her breath. "I'll fight until my last breath for them." Max met her gaze, calm and unwavering. "So will I." And he meant it. Max knew the battle wasn't over. Winning in court that day had given him a temporary victory, but Sophia was not the type to accept defeat. He could see it in her eyes as she left the courtroom, seething with unspoken threats. She would fight tooth and nail, no matter how much it hurt the children, just to prove a point. Over the next few weeks, things became even more complicated. Sophia began calling at odd hours, demanding to speak to the kids, even when it wasn't her scheduled time. If Max didn't answer immediately, she would send long, guilt-ridden messages, accusing him of keeping the children from her. One evening, as he was helping Luca with his homework and Mia was playing with her dolls on the living room floor, his phone rang again. It was Sophia. He sighed, debating whether to answer. The constant tension was exhausting. but he knew ignoring her would only escalate things further. "Hello," he answered, keeping his voice neutral. "Max, this has to stop," she said, her tone somewhere between frustration and desperation. "You're turning them against me." Max clenched his jaw. "No, Sophia. I'm protecting them from your manipulation. They need their mother," she snapped. "You can't just erase me from their lives." "I'm not," he said calmly. "I'm following the custody agreement. If you have an issue, take it up with the court." There was a long pause before she finally spoke again. "You'll regret this, Max." Then she hung up. Max set his phone down, exhaling slowly. He had heard threats before, but something about the way she said it this time sent a chill through him. The next morning, as he dropped the kids off at school, he noticed a familiar car parked across the street. It was Richard's. His father was sitting behind the wheel, sunglasses covering his face, watching. Max's blood ran cold. He hadn't spoken to Richard since he had shown up at his house weeks ago, and now he was just lurking. He walked over to the car, knocking on the window. Richard rolled it down slowly, his expression unreadable. "What the hell are you doing here?" Max asked, his voice low and tense. Richard sighed. "I just wanted to see my grandchildren." Muck scoffed. "That's not how this works. You don't get to just sit outside their school like some creep. If you wanted a relationship with them, you should have thought about that before betraying me." "Max," Richard started, but Max held up a hand. "No, I don't want your excuses. Stay away from my kids, and stay away from me." Richard looked like he wanted to say something else, but Max turned and walked away before he could. He felt Richard's eyes on his back the entire way to his car. Later that night, as he sat in the living room reviewing legal documents, his phone buzzed with another text. This one wasn't from Sophia. "Unknown number asterisk, you can't keep them from me forever." Max's grip on his phone tightened. He had no doubt who it was from. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. Richard and Sophia were desperate, and desperate people made mistakes. He just had to be ready for whatever came next. A week later, it happened. Max arrived at the school to pick up Luca and Mia, only to find that they weren't there. Panic shot through him like a bolt of electricity. He ran to the front office, his heart hammering in his chest. "My kids, where are my kids?" he demanded. The secretary frowned, checking the sign-out sheet. "It looks like their mother picked them up earlier today." Max's stomach dropped. "What? She doesn't have them today. She's not supposed to." "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter," the secretary said, looking concerned. "She had authorization." Max didn't even hear the rest of what she said. He was already dialing his lawyer as he sprinted to his car. Sophia had taken them, and this time, he wasn't sure she planned on bringing them back. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls, police reports, and a growing sense of dread. He tried calling Sophia, but she didn't answer. He tried calling Richard, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Then finally his phone rang. A blocked number. He answered immediately. "Where are my kids?" Sophia's voice was eerily calm. "They're safe, Max. You don't get to decide that," he snapped. "Where are they?" She sighed. "I just needed some time with them, away from all this fighting." "You broke the custody agreement, Sophia. You kidnapped them." "Oh, don't be dramatic," she scoffed. "I'm their mother. I have every right to be with them." Max took a deep breath, trying to rein in his fury. "Bring them back. Now. Or I swear, I'll make sure you never see them again." There was a pause. Then she said, "You'll have to find us first." The line went dead. Max stood frozen, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. His worst nightmare was unfolding right in front of him, and he was going to do whatever it took to get his kids back.